What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for episode 241 as we get set to provide our Arizona State preview and predictions as the Mountaineers hit the road for the final road game of 2025 and what is the penultimate game of the 2025 season. Hard to believe we've already made it through the majority of the regular season. Still a couple of games left, and what's most important is West Virginia's still got bowl eligibility in their sights if they can find a way to win these final two. We'll talk about if they can get it done against the Sun Devils here momentarily. Appreciate you guys tuning into this episode, whether you watch on YouTube, whether you listen on the audio side, any way that you choose to do so. We appreciate that as we continue to try and grow the CRW community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Before we get into the football game and dive in here on the crux of the episode with a brief overview and then talk about the matchups on each side before hitting our key to victory and score predictions, and then, of course, wrapping up with a look around the Big 12 here in Week 12 and making some picks in those games, did want to take a second and shout out the WVU basketball team, man. 4-0 to begin the season, and of course a huge dominating blowout win over the Pitt Panthers. You love to see it. How about the sweep for West Virginia in the backyard brawl in both major sports this year? Take them down in football, take them down in basketball, and couldn't be more happy to see it, especially with the way that it played out, and really impressed with the results for the WVU basketball team there when you take into account the fact that they're still missing a couple of players with Jackson Fields and Chance Moore still yet to join the roster. The big men were super impressive against Pitt, especially Harlan Obioha and the way that they played. And the fact that you get a dominating win in that fashion with a couple of your best scorers kind of having an off night is even more impressive. And I think it shows that West Virginia is really going to have some stifling defense this season and that this team can be pretty good in year one of the Ross Hodge era. But they deserve to shout out there. And, of course, you have to shout it out anytime you beat Pitt in both football and basketball, and do it in basketball in dominating fashion. I'm sure we'll probably talk more about that game and more about basketball in upcoming live streams here on the channel. So if you're listening on the audio side, be sure to come over to the YouTube channel, subscribe here so you get access to those live streams when we do go live here on the channel, which is usually at least once a week, if not more, here throughout the football season. And that will pick up with both sports running simultaneously. And then, of course, we'll really pick up after the first year when I'm at this full time. So with that being said, 4-0 WVU basketball, you love to see it. And West Virginia football, currently on a 2-game win streak. You win one more, they call that a winning streak, right? That's the quote from Lou Brown there from Major League. You know, we've won 2 in a row. We win one more. They call that a winning streak. And this would be a huge win for West Virginia, which would set up a really probably incredible atmosphere for the final game, as West Virginia will be looking for bowl eligibility, and Texas Tech will probably be near top 5 in the country. But you have to get through the defending Big 12 champions, the Arizona State Sun Devils, to be able to set up that showdown in the final game of the season. And West Virginia, although they've played better on the road, of course, recently with the big win over Houston, we got to hope that that continues here in this game against Arizona State if West Virginia wants to have a chance, because these Sun Devils are coming off a bye week. Yet again, West Virginia has to deal with a conference opponent getting an off week before they play them. But what I like about that is earlier in the season when that happened, it didn't result well for West Virginia. Now here we are later in the season, the same thing's going to happen, and I'm expecting better results, which will yet again just be something that shows the growth of this team, the job that this coaching staff has done. Such a great job that we're playing our best football here in November, despite everything that's happened throughout the season, injuries and otherwise. So that's super impressive, and I think that this game right here will just be another notch that tells you that how far that they've came thus far here in 2025 and how far they're going to come moving forward in the Rich Rod 2.0 era. So hopefully, hoping for a good performance here in the final road game of the season. With that being said, let's dive in here a little bit and talk about it. Of course, West Virginia coming in 4-6, 2-5 in the Big 12 Conference, taking on Arizona State, who's 6-3, 4-2 in the conference. Still an outside shot of, reaching that Big 12 Conference title game. They did take down Texas Tech. Let's not forget that. November 15th is the day of the game, and it will be played at 1 p.m., and it'll be televised on TNT, and then again streaming on HBO Max as well, which shout out to TNT, man. Their presentation puts ESPN to shame. I really love the games that have been on that network and hope they continue to keep that contract and maybe even put more games on their networks because they do a phenomenal job. Head coach of Arizona State here in his third season, of course, Kenny Dillingham. highly regarded, and rightfully so, with the incredible turnaround he did in such a short and quick fashion at Arizona State, getting them to, the Big 12 title, be Big 12 champions last year, and then getting them all the way to the college football playoff in a game where they should have upset Texas. Some questionable calls in that one, but Dillingham, very much a rising star, was great as an offensive coordinator, back at Oregon and other stops, and then since he's taken over Arizona State, has really built that program in a similar fashion to how Rich Rod builds his, which kind of makes sense because Dillingham talked about, when he was an offensive coordinator, studying Rich Rod and meeting with Rich Rod and learning from him, and I think that they try and play a very physical, hard edge brand of football, if you want to go there as well. I'm sure Arizona State doesn't call it that, but that's what you see when you watch that team. They're going to be disciplined, and they're going to play very, very hard, and they've found a way to win despite missing some of their best players on their offense, which, let's talk about that offense. Let's get into each side of the matchups here. Let's start with the Arizona State offense against the West Virginia defense. Arizona State's offense, like I said, Kenny Dillingham, still very much involved there, but he does have a lot of trust and faith in his offensive coordinator, Marcus Arroyo, now there for his second season. He worked with Dillingham at Oregon. He was the co-OC there. He was a quarterbacks coach there, really helped them develop some of the players and some of the good offenses they had there when they were with the Ducks, so they definitely have a history with one another. Now, they've had to overcome a lot this season. Already coming into the year, losing Cam Scatterboo was going to be tough enough, and, you thought, well, we'll be okay, though, because we brought in some good running backs with Raleek Brown and Kanye Udo, but the main reason being that you have, in my opinion, what is the best quarterback in the entire Big 12 and one of the better quarterbacks in the nation in Sam Leavitt. So you thought you had that to rely on. You did for the good majority of the season, but then he goes down. He's out for the remainder of the year. And your star wide receiver, who, in my opinion, yet again, best receiver in the Big 12, one of the best in the country, probably going to be a high draft pick in Jorden Tyson. You've had to deal with these games and play without him as well in the past few weeks, with he's dealing with, I believe, a hamstring injury. So West Virginia will face an Arizona State offense without their quarterback in Sam Leavitt, and yet again without their star receiver in Jorden Tyson. But that tells you how much of a good job that Kenny Dillingham has done with this program, that they've been able to win games in spite of that, including their most recent game prior to their bye week, where they won an absolute battle with Iowa State. No Sam Leavitt, no Jorden Tyson. They really relied heavily on that run game with Raleek Brown and the quarterback, we'll see, Jeff Sims. So much so that he set a school record with 228 yards rushing, the most ever by a quarterback at Arizona State. They gave him 29 carries, so you certainly have to be ready for the QB run game in this. A lot of those were just design runs, not a lot of reads involved, a lot of Q power, Q counter, stuff like that, just straight runs for Jeff Sims, who's very talented as a runner. A lot of experience in college football, a veteran, been at multiple programs, was at Georgia Tech before Arizona State. So you definitely still have to be concerned about this Arizona State offense. I say all that to say, despite them not having Sam Leavitt and Jorden Tyson, they are still formidable, and they will find ways to move the football. You can see they average 409 yards per game, and they're top 5 in the Big 12 in rushing offense with 188 yards per game running the football. One big reason for that is Raleek Brown. Now, no one's going to beat Cam Scatterboo. No one's going to come in and directly fill that void, but Raleek Brown has done one hell of a job trying to carry that Arizona State rushing offense. They brought him in. They brought Udo, the running back from Army. Udo's not had as good of a year as I thought he would preseason, but Raleek Brown has really came on in a big way. He's top 3 in the Big 12 in rushing with 770 yards on the season. And, of course, with him and quarterback Jeff Sims, they can hurt you in the run game. Now, the other side of the coin with quarterback Jeff Sims is West Virginia. If they can turn him into, a one-dimensional and only make him pass the football, that could be beneficial for the Mountaineers. And the plus side of that is the fact that West Virginia's run defense has been very stout in recent weeks, holding Colorado to 50 yards last week rushing, getting, 15 TFLs. West Virginia's been very formidable against the run, so that's good because, if Arizona State has to go to the air, we know that they're without Jorden Tyson already, and Jeff Sims has been a bit turnover prone throughout his career. 30 career interceptions versus only 33 career passing touchdowns, and for his career, if you average out his completion percentage, he's right around 56, which is not very good in the passing game, so definitely more of a run-first guy, more of a running threat, and if West Virginia can continue their good run defense, force him to pass the ball, that could help out on this side of the matchup. But the two main targets I would look to if he does go to throw the football, number one will be the tight end, Mateer. 6'4". He's got two big targets that he'll probably highlight here in this game. Since Tyson went out, he's their leading receiver. 31 receptions, 349 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Definitely keep an eye on the tight end there. And then they have another tall target in Malik McLean, 6'5" guy, so we'll have a size advantage on every player on the West Virginia secondary, essentially. And he had 7 receptions for 159 yards in the game against Houston. Kind of was one of the main guys they tried to feature once Tyson went out. Been a little bit quiet since then, but certainly has the capability to get it done. So watch out for those two pass catchers. I think for West Virginia on this side, game plan probably pretty similar to what you showcased last week. Get after the quarterback, try and get some TFLs, try and get some sacks. But goal number 1 for Zach Alley is probably going to be to pack that box and force them to throw the football. And I think that would be a recipe for potential success for West Virginia if they can hold up in the back end. And we saw last week against Colorado, West Virginia as a team have their highest coverage grade of the season. And I think a lot of that is because they were able to pressure the passer. One hand feeds the other in that category. So we'll keep an eye on how West Virginia holds up in the trenches. If they're able to force TFLs, if they're able to get in the backfield some and get some sacks after shutting down the Colorado rushing attack, then you got a chance here. But for now, I will call this one a slight edge to Arizona State just because even without Jorden Tyson and Sam Levitt, they found ways to win against Iowa State, before their bye week. And because the fact they had that off week, Kenny Dillingham's a really good offensive mind. He's probably came up with some stuff that they can hit us on at least early until we adjust, because they'll probably show us some things that we haven't seen yet, is what I'm afraid of on this side of the ball. But that's kind of some thoughts on that side of the matchup. Let's flip it over. Let's talk about the West Virginia offense against the Arizona State defense, which the Arizona State defense, led by defensive coordinator Brian Ward, here in his 3rd season with the Sun Devils. They're currently allowing 24 points per game and 335 yards per game. But the key here is something that we have to keep an eye on in this game, because what does West Virginia want to do? They want to run the football. What does Arizona State like to do? Stop the run, man. We're talking about the number 2 rushing defense in the Big 12, behind Texas Tech, who, of course, is way up there, but they're only allowing 123 rushing yards per game. So that's kind of a battle of the wills there, if you will. The irresistible force meets the immovable object. Can West Virginia find a way to run the football enough against a stout Arizona State run defense is one thing to keep an eye on this side of the ball. Now, when West Virginia does drop back to pass, you won't see a ton of blitzes coming from Arizona State, but despite that, they still do a good job of pressuring the passer with only bringing 4 down linemen, and that's because they have a very talented defensive line and guys that can create havoc despite not needing to blitz. And so that makes it difficult for West Virginia. If they're bringing 4, dropping 7 into zones, not a lot of windows there, and the windows that are there are going to be tight. So I think for West Virginia, they have to find a way to run the football at least some, and then they have to be able to hit those perimeter plays are going to be really impactful for West Virginia in this one, probably hitting some of those screens that they've hit on the outside, screens to the running back, screens to the outside receivers, maybe even some of those jet sweeps we've had success with can be beneficial in this game, but we'll keep an eye on that one right there in that matchup, because whoever wins that in the trenches, the West Virginia rushing offense versus the Arizona State rushing defense, is going to be a key in this game. The star players on that Arizona State defense, I mentioned the defensive line. C.J. Fight is a big man in the middle to worry about. They got a lot of defensive linemen that can get after the pressure. But to me, it's linebacker Keyshawn Elliott and defensive lineman Prince Dorba. Both of the two are in the top 7 in the Big 12 in tackles for loss. Keyshawn Elliott has 10 tackles for loss to go with 77 tackles and 4 sacks. So he's all over the place on that Arizona State defense. And Dorba, not far behind, 7.5 TFLs of his own, and also has 4 sacks, and he's someone that's battled injury at times, but still has been able to get that done. So watch out for those two guys, and just hope that the West Virginia offensive line really does a good job communicating, really does a good job, holding their own against, a talented front 4 of Arizona State that's going to try and get after you. They want to be physical just like you do, so you really need to show that hard edge mentality here in the trenches to find a way to move the football. I think right now this is Arizona State's slight advantage on this side as well. Coming off the bye week worries me, what they're going to be able to, scheme up against some of the things West Virginia has been successful with on offense in recent weeks. And it might be a game where West Virginia has to, beat them with their left hand, so to speak, beat them with one hand tied behind your back, whatever adage you want to use there. West Virginia may not be able to run the football. They may have to make some plays in the passing game. You may not be able to have success with the plays you've had success with over the past 2 weeks during this win streak, because that's on tape and Arizona State's had a bye week to study it. So we'll see what happens. I definitely think this is going to be a heavy adjustment game on both sides, where West Virginia has to make adjustments and then find new ways to move the football or find new ways to stop Arizona State from moving the football on the other side. So that's kind of how I see things on each side of the ball in this one, and some players to watch for the Sun Devils, which brings us to key to victory. And then I'll talk my score prediction for this one, which my key to victory, I think it's whoever wins the passing game battle and doesn't have mistakes, eliminates turnovers while doing that. Because when you look at Arizona State, when we talked about that side, they want to run the football. West Virginia is going to try and make them pass the ball. Same thing on West Virginia's side when they have the ball. Arizona State, top 2 run defense in the Big 12. They're going to try and stop the run first and foremost and force West Virginia to pass the ball. So ideally, at the end of the day, when you're looking at the box score in this game, you're looking at the team stats from this game, I think there's a good chance that whoever is able to pass the football more efficiently, I will say, not necessarily who has the yardage advantage, but who was more efficient, who didn't turn the ball over, who was able to get, a few chunk plays here and there. I think that's going to be a difference. So I think winning the passing game battle while minimizing mistakes will be the key to victory in this one for West Virginia. That's what I'm going with for my key in this one, which brings us to score predictions. Time to talk about if I think the Mountaineers will get it done here against the Sun Devils. And you know what? I think that Arizona State has the home field advantage. I think Arizona State has an advantage coming off of a bye week. But I'm riding high on the Mountaineers right now. I picked us last week and we got it done. I don't want to break that juju. I want to keep that going here. I'm going to be a little superstitious, so to speak, I guess, here with this pick, because I'm going to roll with the Mountaineers to get it done again and hope I can speak that into existence. Arizona State, at the time of this recording, I think is favored by around 11.5 points. I certainly think, if nothing else, West Virginia will definitely cover that spread. I expect this to be potentially a one-score game. It's kind of what I'm looking at with this one. I think with Arizona State, if they had Jorden Tyson, it might be different. If they had Sam Levitt, it would certainly be different. But I think that Arizona State, with Jeff Sims, wants to run the football. West Virginia's been very good rushing defense. If they keep that up, that's going to give them a chance. I think Scotty Fox has shown he's poised on the road. I think, if the run game's not working, he'll be able to make some plays to get it done on offense, just enough for West Virginia to win that passing battle that I talked about and maybe make a big play here and there. And I think what's most important to me that makes me want to pick West Virginia in this game is I think Scotty Fox is more efficient than Jeff Sims. Now, obviously, Scotty Fox has a smaller sample size versus Jeff Sims, who's very experienced, but go back to those numbers I told you earlier. 33 career touchdowns versus 30 interceptions for Jeff Sims. I think you got a great chance to get at least one turnover, potentially the 2 or 3 Zach Alley looks for on defense, and I think you'll need those if you're going to win this game. And also the career 56% completion percentage for Jeff Sims isn't the greatest. If you stop the run, you got a chance to get some stops in general in this game, and then maybe some turnovers if you force them to throw the football, whereas Scotty Fox, I know he had the 2 interceptions last week, one on a 4th down, not that troublesome. The other one was tipped, but the 2 games prior to that, he had 0 turnover-worthy plays even, much less, being turnover prone. He was the complete opposite of that. So I give us a little advantage on that side of things as well. And because of those things, I think West Virginia finds a way. I think that this game is tied up late. I think Scotty Fox puts together a drive. I think Cade Hensley boots one through the nets, and West Virginia sneaks out of Arizona State with their 5th win of the year, and they got a chance to fight for bowl eligibility in the final game of the season. That's what I'm hoping for. I could see it going either way, but I'm trying to speak it into existence, and I'm going with a 24-21 West Virginia victory on the road in Tempe. Let's hope it happens, but should be a fun game and a hell of a battle either way. And that pretty much wraps up the discussion points that I had and what I wanted to cover as far as the Arizona State preview and prediction side of this episode. But we got to wrap up with, a great segment that we always like to, and that's our Around the Big 12 segment, where we're going to go through the Week 12 slate. Hard to believe we're already there, and take a look and make some picks in the games this week around the conference. So let's do that here before we wrap up episode 241 of the CRW podcast, which I appreciate you guys tuning into. Like I said, whether you're on YouTube, whether you listen on the audio side, you can find us on any podcast platform, Amazon, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, you name it. Just search Country Roads Webcast. Leave us a rating there, and we appreciate that. That helps us grow on that side of things. Those of you that watch here on YouTube, you can help us out by hitting that thumbs up button, just taking a second, hitting that like button, helps a ton with that YouTube algorithm, and be sure you're subscribed to the Country Roads Webcast to stay up to date on your WVU sports news. And shout out to our friends over at WVSN and BGS for hosting our episodes on their websites as well. With that being said, let's hit the Around the Big 12 segment, and we can call it an episode here. Some games to pick around the conference on an all-Saturday slate, no weekday games this week, so we'll lead it off with at noon, Kansas State at Oklahoma State in Stillwater on ESPNU. I mean, I just can't pick Oklahoma State this season, man. Kansas State, I think that they'll win this one and probably win it going away. Even though it's on the road in Stillwater, Kansas State gets it done. Give me the Wildcats to get the win there in that one. Next game there is going to be our game of the week, so we will come back to that. Of course, we talked about the Mountaineers and the Sun Devils. One more reminder on the time there. It's a 1 o'clock Eastern kick. You can find it on TNT and on HBO Max. Then we got UCF traveling to Lubbock at 3:30 for a game that will be televised on Fox there. You know, UCF, I just don't think they got nearly anything for Texas Tech. You guys know how I felt about Texas Tech all season. Still feel like they're head and shoulders above pretty much all the other teams in this conference. I think they showed that last week in the win over BYU, and I think they'll win another one and win it handedly over UCF. Give me Texas Tech to win that one. Then a couple of night games in the conference. We have Utah traveling to Waco to play Baylor in a 7 Eastern kick that'll be televised on ESPN2. Now, this being a night game, being at Baylor, Utah having to travel there, I think that this makes it a little bit more of a toss-up than what you'd expect, probably. I think Baylor will probably hang into this thing. You know, Dave Aranda is still trying to coach to stay off that hot seat a little bit, but I think Utah is just a little bit too much for him. I think Utah gets it done and gets the win there at Baylor, although I hope I'm wrong and would love to see Baylor pull the so-called upset there at home in that game. And then the other nightcap, it'll be a late one. If you want to watch this one, stay up late there because it's 10:15 Eastern kick in Provo. Be televised on ESPN as the TCU Horned Frogs head out there to take on the BYU Cougars, who are looking to bounce back after falling to Texas Tech last week. They face another Texas team this week, and I think that they'll be hungry and ready to right the ship and get a win here over TCU. So give me the Cougars. Of course, pro BYU podcast, as we always say here, so no surprise there that I'm going with BYU to get the win over TCU, which brings us to our game of the week here in Week 12. Not a ton of great matchups in the conference, but Cincinnati's still a team that's up there in the top of the standings, looking to maybe sneak into that Big 12 title game and play potentially Texas Tech. But they'll have to go through Arizona first. It is at home. They should have a great crowd for this one. Noon kickoff there at Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati. It'll be televised on Fox Sports 1. Cincinnati favored, but I'm telling you what, I'm going with the upset pick here in my game of the week pick. I don't know why, but I think that Arizona, a little bit better than people expected this year. They're still, kind of that middle tier of the Big 12, where Cincinnati's shown to be, more top tier. But Cincinnati's had a pretty manageable schedule, and I think that Arizona is going to go in there and surprise them. I think Cincinnati's, looking ahead, thinking, hey, we got a couple games left. We can get to the Big 12 title game. I think Arizona is going to play spoiler. I think they'll not only cover, I think Arizona wins. Give me Arizona on an upset here. Picking an upset in the Big 12 game of the week. Let's go. Let's hope it turns out. But there it is, guys. Game picks for Week 12 in our final segment here on episode 241 as we get set to put a bow on this one. Appreciate you guys tuning in to the Arizona State preview and predictions episode here. Final road game of the season and the penultimate game of the 2025 season in general. Hoping for another positive result. Can we make it 3 in a row? That would be incredible. Can't say enough about the job this staff has done already with the football they have West Virginia playing here in November. And things are really, really looking up for the Rich Rod 2.0 era moving forward. And can't wait to continue to talk about the rest of this season. And then, of course, look ahead down the line to all of that as well with you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning into this one. We'll be back to talk about it after the game on Saturday as West Virginia hits the road to Tempe to take on Arizona State tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoyed that game and hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, I'm Jorden Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those